Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. I've been on the road for a few weeks and I'm excited to be back in the office recording another Torah Tuesday for you. I'm Dr. Carmen Imes, Associate Professor of Old Testament at Biola University, and today we're studying Exodus 24, verses 4 through 8. This is the covenant ratification ceremony that happened at Mount Sinai, and there's so much cool stuff to talk about, so thanks for joining me. I'm going to begin by reading my translation from the Hebrew. So Moses wrote all the words of Yahweh. He rose early in the morning. He built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 matzebah for the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent young men of the sons of Israel, and they offered burnt offerings, and they slaughtered sacrifices of peace offerings for Yahweh of young bulls. Moses took half of the blood and set it in ritual bowls, while half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the scroll of the covenant, and he called out in the hearing of the people. They said, "All that Yahweh has spoken, we will do, and we will listen." Then Moses took the blood, and he sprinkled the people. He said, "Behold, the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has cut with you according to all these words." All right, there's a lot to talk about in this passage. Probably you noticed Moses' literacy. Maybe we take reading and writing for granted in the modern world, but in Moses' day, it would have been fairly unusual for someone to know how to read and write. It's not that surprising that Moses knows how to do this because he was raised among the elite Egyptians in the palace. Acts 7 talks about how Moses was trained in all of the ways of the Egyptians, so apparently he can write. This is not the first time Exodus has talked about Moses writing. Exodus 17 verses 14 through 16 is the first time we see Moses being told to write something down. Now, if we take scripture seriously, then Moses knew how to write and he knew how to read. That does not necessarily imply that he wrote all of the Torah or all of the book of Exodus. Clearly, what he's writing right here is the covenant scroll. He's writing down the instructions that God gave him at the top of the mountain so that he can relay those instructions to the people as a whole. And that's what we see in this text. So the covenant ratification ceremony includes a written text. It includes an altar and these standing stones that represent the 12 tribes. And it includes ritual activity. So let's dig into that. Did you notice that Moses got up early in the morning to carry out this particular command of God? He was told way back in Egypt to get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh. We saw that in chapter 8, verse 16 and 9, verse 13. So how appropriate that he gets up early in the morning here to prepare for an encounter with Yahweh. It's showing us these two masters side by side. This is in contrast to what we see in Exodus 32:6, the golden calf or golden bull story, where the people rise up early in the morning to worship the idol. That's going to be a sad counterpart to what we're seeing in this passage here. Now, what are these symbols? The matzebah, this is a word referring to a stone that's put up as a kind of monument to bear witness to a divine encounter. We see this throughout the Torah. One example is when Jacob has this divine encounter in Bethel on his way to the homeland of his mother to find a wife. He is running from his family. There's estrangement, and God meets him in a vision while he sleeps. That's Genesis 28:18. When he wakes up in the morning, he finds a stone and sets it up, and he pours oil on the stone as a symbol of the divine encounter that he had in that place. Here, there are 12 stones set up, and they represent the 12 tribes. Now, if you've actually counted, then you've discovered there are 13 tribes, not just 12. So, which 12 are being represented here? In the original list of Jacob's sons, Jacob had 12 sons, but as you may remember, at the end of Genesis, Joseph brings his 2 sons to his father Jacob for a blessing, And Jacob indicates that those two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be reckoned alongside Joseph's brothers as heads of tribes. And indeed, they're given land. Once they get to the promised land, to Canaan, they're given land. And so that makes 13 tribes. Levi does not get an inheritance because the Levites are the priestly class, they're the priestly tribe, so they don't get a land inheritance. So there are 12 tribes who get an inheritance. I suspect in this case that the 12 stones represent the 12 tribes, not including Levi, because Moses is the one officiating the ritual, and he is a member of the tribe of Levi. So he represents his own tribe, and the stones represent the other 12. We have an altar here that he builds to offer sacrifice, and although there have been altars built before, and although there have been sacrifices made before, this is actually the first time in the Bible that we have an altar built and sacrifices offered on that altar explicitly. One close call is Exodus 18, verse 12, where Jethro offers sacrifices, presumably on an altar. But Exodus is waiting to tell us about this altar where the sacrifices are made, because this is the fulfillment of what Moses and Aaron requested from Pharaoh way back in Egypt. Let us go into the wilderness so that we may sacrifice to Yahweh. And now they are at Mount Sinai, and they are finally fulfilling the purpose for which they were released. The participants in this special event, this ritual, are young men. This is before the priests have been appointed from the tribe of Levi. So Moses gathers some young men. It's possible that these are the firstborns of their family who participate in this ritual. Some scholars think that before there were priests, the firstborn functioned in a kind of priestly role, and that's why there's a special tax on the firstborn later when the priestly class is established. But all the people are around because all of the people are going to be sprinkled with blood. We'll come to that in a moment. The ritual activity involves two kinds of offerings, burnt offerings and peace offerings. A burnt offering is an olah, and that's a derivative of the verb Allah, which means to go up. So the burnt offering is one that's entirely offered on the altar. The entire thing is turned to smoke. The idea is that the sacrifice, actually, like the animal that's being offered, is being transferred to the heavens by means of smoke. One of the things you'll notice in this passage and many other passages that describe rituals is they're not fully explained. What is the significance of this? What is the meaning behind each part of it? And we don't know exactly. We can infer these things, like the smoke going up can be inferred, but this was logical for the original participants. They already lived in a world where rituals and sacrifices were performed, and they understood the logic, so it didn't need to be explained. The other kind of offering here is the peace offering. This is the first time in the Bible that we get peace offerings. They're called shelamim, and that's from the Hebrew word that you probably have heard before. Shalom means peace, and these are the shelamim, the peace offerings. And although the burnt offering is completely burned up on the altar, the peace offering involves the separation of the animal into two categories. Some of the parts of the animal are offered up as smoke, and that creates a pleasing aroma. It's like it makes it smell good to God. But the rest of the animal is reserved to be cooked and eaten by the people who are bringing the offering. So it's possible that the young men, maybe there was one young man from each tribe that was part of this process, and that each one brought a young bull to offer as a peace offering, in which case there would be a whole bull to be cut up for every one of the tribes so that everyone could have a taste of the sacrifice that's being offered. It's a kind of family feast and a way of indicating that Yahweh is inviting you to his table, that there's good fellowship, good relations between the people and Yahweh. So neither of these offerings have to do with sin. Both of them have to do with expressing gratitude to God and indicating a willingness to be in close relationship with him. Now there's blood involved. The blood of the animals is drained out. Half of the blood is put in ritual bowls and half is sprinkled on the altar. This is almost the only time that blood is then related directly to the people. So blood signifies consecration, something being set apart for God, and it's a prerequisite to approaching God that the people are set apart and in a state of being consecrated for God. Moses takes the blood and he sprinkles it on all of the people, which would have been quite something. The only other time it happens where blood is sprinkled on people is in the priestly ordination ceremony that we read about in chapter 29, verse 20. So this is, I think, very significant because it indicates that the people as a whole are being ordained to become a kingdom of priests. As we saw in chapter 19, verse 6, God calls them a kingdom of priests. So it's appropriate that they're sprinkled with blood the way the priests will be eventually sprinkled with blood. There's one other time when sprinkling happens, and that's the red heifer ritual in Leviticus 14, verses 6 and 7. That involves someone's reinstatement to the community after long-term ritual impurity. So if someone had to be outside the camp because they were impure because of either a long-term skin disease or long-term oozing or whatever that made them ritually impure, then when they were healed, they could be reinstated by going through this red heifer ritual, which also included the sprinkling of blood. So it's like they're being reconsecrated as a kingdom of priests. So I think this is really significant that it talks about blood being sprinkled on them. That sets this apart from any of the regular offerings in Leviticus 1 through 7 that the people might bring for sin, for regular fellowship with God. This is something different. This is setting them apart as the people who represent God as a kingdom of priests. There are a couple of other Bible passages that refer back to this or echo this language. Isaiah 52 verses 13 through 15 speak of the nations being sprinkled, and this is probably an indication that someday even the nations will be enfolded into the covenant community, which is really beautiful. And then the New Testament picks up this language in Hebrews 10:22 and 1 Peter 1 verse 2, where both passages talk about being sprinkled with Christ's blood, indicating that we too are part of this kingdom of priests. Really fun stuff. Now, you might have noticed as I was reading that what Moses says is, "Behold the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has cut with you." And I just want to explain my wording there. In the Old Testament, covenants were not made, they were cut. Because of the symbolic use of cut animals, you might remember from Genesis chapter 15 that Abraham prepares to enter into a covenant with Yahweh by cutting animals and making a pathway between them. And the idea is that both parties will pass between the pieces of cut animal, and that's their way of indicating that they are taking this covenant with utmost seriousness. It's a way of saying, may this be done to me if I break my covenant agreement. So Yahweh has cut a covenant with Israel, and he has invited them in to be a kingdom of priests by sprinkling them with his blood. This last line in verse 8 is clearly echoed by Jesus in the Last Supper that he has with his disciples, where he says, "Behold, this cup is the blood of the new covenant," or is the new covenant in my blood. He's echoing language from Exodus 24, verse 8. So you can see that in Matthew 26, 28, and in Mark 14, 24. Jesus adopts the symbolism of this covenant ratification ceremony, and he interprets his own death as a new covenant ratification, or the ratification of the new covenant or renewed covenant with his disciples, opening the door for the nations to be included. So exciting to see these connections. I hope this has been rich for you. We're going to continue on next week with the rest of the chapter. Moses and the elders are going to climb the mountain. Before we go, I wanted to tell you about a conference that's coming up next week at Biola University. It's called the Anchored Conference. It's a conference for pastors, church leaders, and the community. I haven't given you very much warning to come to this. So what I'm telling you right now is that we're going to be having this conference annually going forward. So if you can't make it this year, put it on your calendar for early June next year. This year we have Pastor Eric Geiger from Mariners Church and Voss Camp, Matt Chandler, William Lane Craig, J.P. Foster, John Townsend, Ed Stetzer, and yours truly. I'll be doing a breakout session on difficult texts in the Old Testament and how to reckon with those. So I hope you can make it June 9 through 11 here on campus in La Mirada, and I will put a link in the description below so that you can find out more information about the schedule, the cost, and how you can be part of it. Have a great week.